am the president and CEO of Time's Up. I get to have a conversation now with two women who, throughout their careers, have embraced ambition. As a nationally acclaimed journalist, an award-winning actress, some people we have watched, on big screens and small screens and admired. But now what they're doing is actually also talking about how you overcome the obstacles to ambition and working towards it. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, thank you, Tina. And of course, Gretchen Carlson came forward about Roger Ailes at Fox News before I came forward about Harvey Weinstein. So she had a very special role in helping to turn the soil. And, my thought process was that I had actually told my story about Harvey Weinstein to Variety magazine 2 years prior to telling it to the New York Times, but nobody paid attention. And the time was right, and the culture was starting to change, in part because of what Gretchen had done, in part because the New York Times is such a venerable institution with a fleet of attorneys, and in part because of the Pulitzer Prize-winning work of Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey, who showed the pattern, as they called it. And my thought process was, I have a God of my understanding, and I've already made the most important decision that I'll already make, which is that I think the universe is ultimately a friendly place, and as Dr. King said, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And I went for a run on Peach Hollow Road in Williamson County, Tennessee, and I thought, I'm taken care of, and it may not be immediate, and it may not be fun, and it may take a long time, but I have my dignity, I have my integrity, and in my life, I like to do the harder thing. That's a good time in Ashley Judd's world. And, I reached the up with which I could not put a long time ago, and that is sexual and gender-based violence. And so ultimately, it was a pretty easy decision. I did talk to my mom, and she said, "Oh, honey, go get him." And I did talk to my attorney, and she said, "If you can't do this, who can?" And then I went to the Smoky Mountains and took a long hike by myself while the article was being published. So that's a little bit of the background there.
Ashley, it's an honor to be on this stage with both of you. How much time do you have? You can explain all of this. When I jumped off the cliff by myself on July 6, 2016, I had no idea what was going to happen the next minute or the next day. And one thing that was for sure was that I realized that I was not alone very quickly. And so for women like Ashley, or 15 months before Ashley came forward, other women started coming to me. And I realized it was a pervasive epidemic. Even I didn't know that when I made the decision to sue Roger Ailes. And if there's been one constant in my life, it's been that when there's a challenge in front of me, I usually go for it. And a lot of people said to me, well, now that your case resolved, why don't you just go home and spend more time with your kids? And I was like, no, because I have to try to fix this. Now, I didn't know that solving sexual harassment in the workplace was such a tangled web, but it is. And the three of us up on this stage understand that better than anyone. But the main thing that I have put my focus into is trying to change the laws. It is my belief that if we can eradicate forced arbitration clauses in employment contracts which silence women and put you into a secret chamber, if we can eradicate non-disclosure agreements that make me not able to tell you any of the details about my case, but more importantly, the millions of other women who have been silenced because of this across the country, who maybe don't have the means and the platform that I have to get out there and talk about this, I'm doing this for them. So I have a bill on the Hill. It's been there for the last 3 years. It's bipartisan because that's the only way it's going to get done. And that is to eradicate arbitration clauses in employment contracts.
And what's it called?
It's HR, it's the House Bill 1443. We are going to reintroduce it in the Senate in the coming weeks as well. I believe that this changes the landscape of the American workforce if we pass it, because companies will no longer to be able to say, when you come to complain about harassment, she has an arbitration clause, and that means we get to put her over into this secret chamber over here, and we never hear from her ever again. And you know what else happens in that scenario for thousands and thousands of women over the last 30 years? The perpetrator gets to stay on the job. Because this woman had the courage to come forward and did nothing wrong. Now she's put out to pasture, and she might get a small paltry settlement, but she never works again. And the perpetrator gets to stay on the job in many cases because nobody knows about it. And that is unjust. And I'm going to make sure that I change.
95% of Fortune 500 CEOs in this country are men. So if men are not part of the solution here in fixing workplaces, We are not going to get this done. But I want you both to address, how do we engage men? What should we be doing? And what role do men have in this movement that we're trying to force change on?
And we need to be very clear about our language, because we omit men from that conversation when we talk about, battered women's shelters, for example. Well, it's men who hit women that put women in battered women's shelters. And so we need to make sure that we're inviting men to take responsibility for themselves, and that we hold them accountable from whence this violence comes, and invite them to do their own radical self-responsibility and to change. And that will start to change when, for example, we're as willing to raise our sons as we are willing to raise our daughters. We're still willing right now, and we've gotten more willing to raise our girls to be like our boys, but oh no, we won't raise our boys to be like our daughters. So that's a really good place to start. Or looking at an organization like A Call to Men that has a vast curriculum that can be employed in schools, in the military, in business places, in all kinds of organizations where you can just slot these curriculum in and learn about how to prevent sexual harassment, change attitudes. Women are not the property of men, how not to objectify girls and women, how to do bystander interventions. The resources are there, it's a matter of will.
I agree with everything that Ashley said. As a mother of a teenage son and a teenage daughter, the reason I jumped off that cliff was for my children and for all of yours and for everyone in the United States and the world, so that they would not have to face what we have faced in our lifetime. We thought we had solved it. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that we really need to get to our sons. We do a great job in this country of empowering our girls. You just heard in the last panel, they outpace boys in college education. But then, what happens? And the only way that we can truly change the mind of the eventual man is to change it when we can form it. And I have been so heartened to watch the transformation in my son, the gift of courage that I have given to him to stand up for women. And when I formed Lift Our Voices in December to eradicate NDAs and arbitration clauses, 2 weeks ago on the debate stage, I've been asking for, and I know for 20 years women have been asking for, questions about sexual harassment on the debate stage. And they finally asked it.
It was the first time in 20 years of presidential debates.
Yes, and they finally asked it. And you know what happened? My son and my daughter were watching with me, and they cheered, and they said, Mommy, they're asking your question that's important.
So great.
And that's where I really think we have to put so much of our focus.
We are in, I believe, a fundamental transformational moment where we can truly shift gender norms, truly shift culture, truly build workplaces that these amazing young women that we've seen all day, that we can build workplaces today that will be worthy of them when they go into the workplace. And that's our commitment. That is something I want all of you to join in on. It's something Tory and Embrace and Vision have been all about. And thank you both for leading the way. Thank you.